Welcome to Kind Curiosity, the podcast that challenges people to have the audacity to be kind. Today, my guest is someone that I've known for quite a while. She holds a bachelor's degree in computer information systems, a master's in educational administration and supervision, and a doctorate in education leadership and administration. She is a wife and mother of two amazing adults. Dr. Jeanine Wilson, thank you for joining the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. I put that emphasis on doctor because she does have a doctorate degree and I need her to own that. Well, she does own it, but I need her to own it all the time. So, so just so our audience knows, Jeanine and I first met, I think was it sixth grade?
Yes.
Was it sixth
Yeah.
grade?
Mhm.
Okay. I won't tell anybody how old we are, but that's many moons ago. What I remember about Dr. Wilson was her confidence. That's what attracted me to her when I first met her. She just walked in the room and there was like this, everybody kind of like stood at attention, even in sixth grade. And I always remembered that about her. And I was like, I want her to be my friend because I didn't have that. Do you remember kind of when we first met, our first meeting? You do. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember which teacher's class it was in?
I can't remember his name. He was an AP. We were in his office and to meet him because we were in there to apply for bus tickets. We had
Okay.
found out we found out that if you qualified for free lunch and you caught the public bus, then you qualified
Uh-huh.
for bus tickets. So you were already in
Right.
the office. And I
Right.
walked in because I learned during lunchtime that you qualified for bus tickets. So I said, well, I can go into the Mr. So-and-so's office and tell him I qualified for bus tickets. The secretary kept
Right.
telling us that we had to wait. We would
Okay.
sit down the couch, and so while we were waiting, we was talking and talking. And then I was getting impatient. I was like, where is he at? 'Cause I just can't get bus tickets. And his secretary was getting so irritated with us. But I was like, if we qualify for it, then let's go.
Right.
Let's get that.
Right.
I mean, we not
Yeah.
purposely missing class.
Right. Right. See, and this is what I'm talking about, what attracted me to her, because there is no way at that age I had that kind of confidence to talk like that. What I remember is that it was natural for you. It wasn't forced. It wasn't something that you felt like, oh, let me see if I could talk up about this. It was just natural, just came out. And I always remember that even as we got older, when we were in high school, you were that way.
Well, the interesting thing about that I appreciate that I came across as confident because I really wasn't.
Mhm.
It
Mm.
was really out of necessity to have to be
Right.
able to say, "Hey, this is what I need. You're the person that
Mhm.
well, Imma stay here until you give it to me. Now we could, talk for a few minutes and I can answer a couple questions and you give it to me, or I could
Right.
just linger and sashay around the room." But the common denominator is I came to get a particular thing because,
Right.
people aren't gonna give you anything, and you
Right.
have to and unfortunately, we have to put ourselves into places to
Yes.
show people that, again, I came for a particular thing, and you're gonna give it to me, and I'm not leaving until you do, or Imma figure out what
Right.
it takes to do it, or if you're not gonna be the one to give it to me, then fine, I had somebody else.
Yeah.
It seems
Yeah.
like confidence, but really a lot of nervousness behind it, a lot of uncertainty.
And that's the other thing about Dr. Wilson that I love is that you always had that eye of suspicion. So I know that's another reason why I clung to you so much because I was like, okay, I know Janine got my back. Even though she just said that it was out of necessity, to me, it felt like that's who she was. And that's who you were, rather. I'm talking to Janine.
Mhm.
So I appreciate that about you. Even though you said it was forced, it wasn't to me. To me, it was just like you came out the womb looking at the doctor like, "Who hit me?" That's the way you have always appeared to me, and it's funny because for all of you that know, what are we? I am a year and 6 days older than Janine. I always remember that we were both born in the same month, but I'm a year and 6 months older, but I always felt like she was my big sister. or you're my big sister. So we've been through, the death of parents together. We've been through marriages together. Marriages, I'm saying that because each of us have only been married once. We still are to our spouse. The birth of children together, watching those children grow up, watching them go to college, graduate college. And now we're at a season in our lives where we can really truly concentrate on who we are. And another piece of advice that you gave me that I still remember is when my three girls was going to high school. You said to me, Felicia, get a life now. Because if you don't, when they leave, you're not gonna know what to do. I'm like, "Okay, that makes sense." And that is what helped me to separate myself from my daughters when they were in high school to not be a helicopter parent and to say, "Hey, you guys go on to do your own thing. I'm gonna start doing my own thing." And that's helpful because I see people now that they don't know what to do
Mhm.
because they put their whole life was their children.
Yeah.
It was for us, but we had a separate life that involved just Felicia or Jeanine. What made you say that? Because remember, my kids are older, so I got to that point before you did.
Well, I think I was, I don't know where I was, but just hearing someone or a reference to someone say that your only identity is somebody's mom. What do you think?
Mhm.
That's the only thing I am is I was born your mom. I was born, your
Right.
wife. I was born somebody else's something as though to this world. And that was the very first thing you did was you was a what? You was somebody's husband and wife or somebody's,
Mhm.
mother. But you're not your
Mhm.
person. I'm a person.
Right.
I think what also made me get to that point was remembering I was in a class, actually, it was actually for work. I was learning about, adolescent theory and when kids get to a point to where they're getting post-adolescent and that could,
Uh-huh.
relationship changes with their parent. And they were saying that the most shocking part about post-adolescence isn't the biological changes. The most shocking part is your child now grows up and realizes, "Oh, your mother or your father is a whole human being. Oh, you
Mm.
have a life." Oh, because they just think of us as the person who gives them something, the person who picks them up,
Okay.
the person who drops them off, the person who picks up whatever. They just think of us only in that context. But they don't think that, you know what? I am a woman who has feelings. I have
Mhm.
desires. I have goals. I have
Mhm.
dreams. And so when kids get post-adolescent and you become less available to them because you are now pursuing your dreams or doing whatever it is that makes you as a person whole, they can get a little resentful. In my class, we were looking at instances where parents were realizing that post-adolescent children were getting combative sometimes, and it's really because they're afraid because they're growing up and it's time for
Right.
them to leave and now deal with
Okay.
this world by themselves. But then it's like they feel like you might be kind of moving away from them. But in actuality, no, I've always been doing this. I've always been a person. And so that's what honestly what made me hold on to that. And I tell you this
Mhm.
kind of story for a long time. So my husband coached little league football for years. He was a kind of in and he coached football, he coached basketball and soccer because no matter what sport our kids got involved in, he was going to be involved in such a way to where he was either helping the coach or he became the head coach and he was a head football coach. I was at a place at a store and this person, I just heard somebody say, Miss Coach James, Miss Coach James. And I wasn't paying attention to it. I thought it was just whatever. It was two kids calling my name and they were calling their name for me was Miss Coach James.
Miss Coach James.
Miss Coach
Okay.
James. We went somewhere for Mother's Day and ran
Mm.
kids in I mean, mind you, by this time the guy's grown. He was like, "Hey, Miss
Right.
Coach James, good to see you."
Yeah.
I gave me the kids, tell me how you
Yeah.
doing. But just
Yeah.
again, just wrapped up in the identity of someone
Identity.
else,
Yeah.
And
Right.
that was another eye opener too. I was like, I have a name, and no matter how many times I said,
Didn't matter. You were still
"Miss
Miss
Coach
Coach
James," I was
James.
like, yeah, it's important. It's important to
Okay.
and it kinda get like you say, we're at that stage of our life now where because we have raised our children, we do kinda have the ability to say, "I wanna focus on something that fulfills me as a person, not because I wanna be a better mother," because the things we were doing,
Right.
It was because
Right.
we want to be a better mother.
I love that, and I never knew that story, so that's awesome. So even as adults, they are still calling you Miss Coach Jane because that's who you were to them all
Mhm.
growing up. So this show is about being kind, curious, and having the audacity to be kind. One thing that I know about you as an educator is you have a passion for students. Janine and I grew up in Detroit public schools. To us, we had a damn good education
Yes, I
to
did.
us. What about that growing up in that school system, growing up the way we did? Both of us grew up, we weren't well off at all. I can honestly say I grew up in poverty. What about that makes you want to be kind to students when you see that they're in the environment or they're following the track that you follow coming up? What Because I hear you tell me stories sometimes and you'll push back on some administrators that don't see the child as a child, they just see them as a problem. But what I know about Dr. Jeanine L. Wilson is that she will always advocate for those children, and strikes at the heart of who you are and at the heart of you being kind and having the audacity to be kind in spite of everything else. What makes you be that way towards these children?
Because I know from personal experience that poverty doesn't define you. And,
Mm,
regardless of the child's social status or socioeconomic status, that has absolutely nothing to do with their intellect. What it does have to do sometimes is with the access and exposure that you get, but the people who provide the access and the exposure are the teachers and the administrators who have biases about children who are born into poverty or live
yes.
into poverty. So
Okay.
that's on the adult. That's not on the child. And
Uh-huh.
that child wakes up in the morning ready to be the best that they can be. No child wakes up saying, "Oh, I think I'm just gonna go to school today and just act up."
Mm,
That
mhm.
they don't wake up like that,
Right.
you know? They don't do that. They wake up with a lot of possibility, a lot of thoughts and ideas about some kind of new experience they're gonna have, something that they're gonna learn today. It might not be what the teacher thinks, but they do wake up ready to learn something. And so,
Mhm.
it's important for the adults to realize that we're the ones who put the barriers in kids' lives. It's not the children. Kids don't go out here and put barriers in their lives about their skin color. Kids don't do that.
Right. Right.
Kids don't go out here and put barriers because they don't live on a certain side of town, or they don't live in a certain neighborhood, or their parents don't move in a certain circle. Kids don't do that. It's the adults who.
Uh-huh.
So, yes,
Mhm.
always be kind to kids because that is not what they asked for. They didn't ask for that. The other reason is, and I say all the time, I unequivocally claim being raised in the Detroit public school system, going to public schools during my whole life because it is what built me. It's what built me.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
say it when I speak at conferences. I say it when I'm on interviews. I was on an interview a few weeks ago, and I opened up by saying I am a proud part of the Detroit Public Schools because my
Mm,
teachers and administrators didn't limit us because of whatever was happening. But the other reason
right.
why it's important, Felicia, to be kind to kids and really anybody, but more particularly kids, those kids grow up.
Mhm.
Those kids grow up to be adults.
Mhm.
We grow up to be old, different. They're growing up to
Mhm.
be adults. We're growing up to get
Mhm.
old. Guess what? When we grow up to get old, guess who we need? We need those
That's
adults.
right.
I had
Mhm.
a eye-opening experience, when I was a principal several years ago. It was at an alternative campus for students who were at risk of dropping out of high school. And some of
Mhm.
my students were decided they wanted a different way of life, decided they wanted to come back to high school. So they came to my campus and they were in a good space and motivated and ready to get their high school diploma and move on. But then I also
Okay.
had some students who did not want to be back in school. There's a lot of different situations. So I had one student like that, and he was on a very dangerous path toward hanging with the wrong
Okay.
crowd. His dad was really having a very difficult time getting him to just do what he needed to do and stay out of trouble. And
Mhm.
so it got to a point to where this particular student, he wanted to skip every day to where I made him sit in the room next to my office. I was like,
Okay.
"Okay, you're gonna be in when class is over, he's gonna be in here next to my office," and he would say to me, "Oh, you treat me like a kid." Yeah, so this is what we're gonna do. We went through that and he couldn't stand it. He opened that because I knew if I let him out of our sight, and I used to tell the staff knew in between we were doing transition periods from class to class, don't let Marvin walk by himself because Marvin was the type he would walk off the campus. and go to his
Oh,
girlfriend's
wow.
house, his
Okay.
friend's house, hanging out, doing
Okay.
things he shouldn't be doing. And his daddy, poor thing, he would just be, he worked in a situation where he didn't have access to a phone. He worked at what we call in the patch here where we have. So he couldn't be like the kind of parent where, oh, you can call work and get him. When he got called from work, it was like detrimental to his job and his livelihood. So
Okay.
you're not gonna do that. So anyway, fast forward, he finally, we got to the end of that semester. He did not return to school. I never knew what happened to him. He was a handful.
Mm.
Fast forward about 3 years later, we had damage to our home. And one of the gentlemen that came to do the mitigation was talking. He said, "Oh, I have a crew will be here tomorrow. And these two gentlemen are going to clear out the upstairs, and these two ladies are going to clear out the back room." And so he was like telling us he's going to have 4 people here. So we'll know how to
Mhm.
work on the house. So I was at work and I came back and I pulled in the driveway and I said, "Hey, he looks familiar." So I
Mhm.
pulled up and the gentleman that owned the company he introduced me. This was because you just got home. He just introduced me to the team. The young man was Marvin, but Marvin was using a different name. So I went
Right.
in the house. But I said, "Nah, that's him." I said, I walked back outside and I'm talking by myself. I said, "Hey," he looked at me, he was like, "Miss." I said, "Marvin." He was like, "Hey, Miss." I said, "How are you doing?" And he was telling me he was doing better. He's working full time doing construction work with the crew.
Okay.
But if my point is if I had not established the kind of relationship I established with him, even though it was
Right.
a relationship where I was being stern, even though it was a relationship where I got on his nerves by making him stay in
Mhm.
class, and he got on my nerves by trying to run off the campus,
Mm.
the man that's in here rebuilding my house. Not
Right.
only does that mean he's a man that's rebuilding my house, he has access to my house now.
Right.
Okay, so he
Right.
access to my house, he knows where I live, he knows where my house is
Right.
at. And so that's why you have to be you don't know when you're gonna run across people in this life again.
Right.
And more
Right.
importantly, you don't know who you're ever gonna meet. We can
Right.
place ourselves in situations where we may think, "Oh, I'll never need that."
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to be kind to kids, regardless of their social economics, economic status, regardless of their poverty level, regardless of their skin color, regardless of you fill in the blank. Be kind to kids, number one, because they're people and they
Mhm.
didn't ask for their situation. And then
Mhm.
number two, again, kids grow up to be adults while we grow up to be old. And old
Right.
people,
They need those adults. Okay.
yeah,
Well, it's important. I like that, and I'm hoping that Marvin I know just from the story that Marvin appreciated
yes,
what you did because we know
yes,
kids don't appreciate it at the time, but when they get older, they were like, "That was the best lesson I could have had."
yes,
And it showed that somebody actually cared enough
yes,
to say, "No, we're gonna keep an eye on you." Because when you're younger, you think, I'm not a baby." But
right,
as you get older,
yep,
your memory comes, you go, "They weren't treating me like a baby, they were trying to help me." So I'm pretty sure he remembers that and he appreciates that. In your years as an educator, have you ever come across a student that has been kind to another student in spite of others maybe teasing that person? So have you ever encountered a student having the audacity to be kind when everyone else was not?
yes, for sure. A lot,
Mhm.
and blessedly, more instances than not. I've had experiences where students have stood up to other students who were mean or hateful or just
Mm,
unkind to another student, and like, "You don't have to be that way, leave her alone or leave him alone," or, "If
right,
you wanna pick on some," how kinda like it was for us, "You wanna pick on somebody, pick on me."
right,
And that's one thing as an educator, I'm not gonna act like, "Oh, the adults have all the answers, they got it all right, and kids don't." No, that's not true. Sometimes some adults come into the situation, and you need more help than the kids do. And
right, right.
oftentimes, those of us who are in school leadership, we don't wanna confront that reality. We're quick to address the child who is
Mhm.
not, moving and functioning in a certain way, but we don't wanna address the adult. And so I've had instances where I had one student, her name was Tanisha, she was so funny, Tanisha might have been 4 feet tall, she was real tiny, real tiny. And she was a pretty quiet kid, she didn't say too much, but she was engaging in class. And she was coming to the classroom one day, and I was like, "What is that noise?" Because I used to teach my kids when I walk I don't need to hear you before I see you. So to kind of
Right.
control voice in the hallway when you walk into my classroom, I had established a situation with my students. Don't run in my classroom about the noise. And so I would say, I
Right.
don't really hear you before I see you. So one day I'm hearing this noise. I'm like, what is that noise? And I heard this person say, that's not necessary and it's not going to happen today. And I was like, wait a minute.
Mm.
So mind you, she's real tiny, but I see four
Mhm.
other students, and they're coming like a group of kids. But I can't see who's talking. And I'm like,
Right.
I said, first, so I come out the door and I'm like, wait a minute, why am I hearing this noise? I keep telling y'all, I don't need to hear you before I see you. And they were like, "No, miss, no." And they would walk in the door, and it was Tanisha, and she was talking to one of our language arts teacher, and she was an older woman, and she could be a bit much. But Tanisha came in, and she was just real, real upset. So she just kept saying, "It's not gonna happen today. Today gonna be the last day." And I was like, "Okay." So
Wow. Okay.
Ashton, and she said that the teacher had kept berating another student. So they had a classmate. He was one of those students, real quiet, kept
Mhm.
to himself, super, super smart. But
Right.
if you give him a writing assignment, he's going to always be the very last child to do it. What it is, it's going to take him the whole 90 minutes plus some. He's just going to always be the last kid because he would take a very, very, very long time to write. I mean, a very long time.
Okay.
So apparently, in this English language arts class they were in, he was taking a long time. It was time for the bell to ring. It was time to get ready to transition for class. And he was still writing. Teacher
Mhm.
just was like, just basically berating him, telling him, "It
Right.
should take you
Right.
this long, blah, 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 blah." And Tanisha lost it. And she said, "Miss,"
Okay.
and she told me, she said, I didn't call her out her name. So let's
Okay.
give you a hand clap for that. Thank you.
Right.
But she said, "It doesn't make," she said, "That's unnecessary." She said, "You're a grown woman." She said, "You're a full grown woman for you to talk to that child like that." She said, it takes him a long time. So what? And it wasn't kind. The teacher just was
Right.
not kind to the other student. I appreciate the fact that number one, she saw it and she called it for what it was.
Right.
Number
Right.
two, she could have done what some kids will do is start adding, joining in pretty much and talking
Yeah.
about them, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also number 3, she realized that, you know what, somebody's gotta say something.
Mhm.
And he's not gonna say anything because he's a real quiet kid. He wasn't
Okay.
gonna rock the boat,
Mhm.
and he would just sit there and look at you while you're talking to him and telling him, "You're taking too long. Hurry up, hurry up." He's
Mhm.
just gonna sit there and stare at you.
Wow.
And so that I will always remember that. Yeah.
Okay. So she definitely had the audacity to be kind, and she took the audacity to the next level.
In her defense, as she should, as she
Yeah.
should have, because,
Absolutely.
again, like I say, it's not the adults who have all the answers, and it's not the adults who
Mhm.
know exactly how. Sometimes we miss the mark on how we treat kids
Mhm.
and how we
Mhm.
treat others. It's not always the kids.
Right, right. Okay, so let's think about the current environment that we're in. Do you think that teachers now, do they have the courage to stand up or the audacity to stand up in spite of what the administrators are telling them? This is now what we're going to do. This is the new normal. We're going to start erasing history. We're not going to talk about this in history anymore because it might make certain students feel some type of way. So do you think teachers or administrators or educators today have the audacity to be kind, knowing that doing that may be at the detriment of their career?
I have
Okay.
the challenge is the media won't see it. The
Okay.
media won't see it.
Okay.
The media sees it. The media won't report it until it becomes something that is, advantageous for them. The other reason is
Okay.
because, unfortunately, it's kinda like I equate it to back in the days when, slaves were told they couldn't read, and there was somebody who
Mhm.
chose to sneak and teach a
Right.
slave to read and never told anybody.
Right.
That's the environment in some places now.
Right.
Places,
Right.
people don't think twice about it. We're gonna do whatever we're gonna do, but then there are other instances where we'll teach you how to read, we'll teach you how to write, but we're not gonna tell anybody. No, we'll keep it
Okay.
between us. So that's kinda how I equate it to now.
Mm.
The main thing I would say, I don't think it's a situation where educators lack kindness. I think,
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's a situation where they lack courage
Okay.
because the mindset has been, "Let me threaten your livelihood
Mhm.
so I can control you."
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
letting me threaten your intellect or let me threaten your ability. It's let
Mhm.
me threaten your mindset because money is what makes the world go round. So
Mhm.
if I threaten your money, I get a tighter hold on it, not realizing that as an educator, you have a lot of options to earn a living. It might not,
Okay.
it's just a not, but that takes courage. It
Right.
takes courage. At the end of the day, if they think they can control you by threatening your access to your money, then they will continue to use that avenue. And that's
Okay.
where you see quite a few teachers leaving the profession. They
Mhm.
are taking that courageous step and saying, you know what, I can't function like this. And so
Right.
you will hear a lot of stories, and there's a lot of data out there where teachers are just saying, y'all can have it. You're not going to
Okay.
keep controlling me from doing,
Right.
in an attempt to keep me from doing what's right just because you hold my check. You're not going to keep doing it.
Mhm.
The data does show there are quite a few who are just choosing to leave the profession.
That courage leads to the audacity to do certain things that people are telling you, I wouldn't do that," and you're like, "I'm gonna do it anyway, I'm sorry."
Correct.
It
Correct.
there's this thing, the quiet resignation of Black women this year, right? Have you done it, and what have you seen in your profession?
No, I haven't done it, and I'll tell you why. Because if I step back, then it's giving you permission to treat me any kind of way and
Mhm.
talk to me any kind of way, and that we not
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm. Right.
We might need to have a different way of communicating or coexisting in the workplace. But if I step back from teaching you, because this is for me, it's more than about quote unquote DEI, it's about teaching people how to treat you. I have a
Right.
certain set of values. I have a certain set of idiosyncrasies of the way that I function because of my cultural heritage. And the same applies to
Mhm.
every cultural group. You have a certain
Mhm.
way of moving, thinking, breathing, eating because of your cultural background. That's all it
Right.
is. And so I just have
Right.
to teach you what's different for me. If I'm a Jewish woman, I have to teach you what's different for me during the times of um, Rosh Hashanah. If I'm a
Right.
Muslim, I gotta teach you how to treat me during the times of Ramadan, in the workplace, I mean. So I'm just teaching you how to treat me. I'm not gonna be at your potluck. I'm not gonna eat your pork. It's important for you to know that. So when I don't join your potluck where you have the pork, it doesn't have anything to do about you.
Mhm.
It's all about because of my cultural background and my heritage and me and how I celebrate my heritage and how I celebrate my culture. The second reason
Right.
is because at the end of the day, you ain't that special. Everything ain't about you. People take
Right.
that they take on the front to, well, she didn't want to join the whatever because they were having, I'm gonna use the pork again. Ain't nobody thinking about you and your pork
Right.
about
Right.
you.
Right. Right.
Me. At this
Right.
time of my this is where we and my family and my culture choose to take a moment to focus on the spiritual aspect of our lives, and we fast,
Mhm.
or we take a focus on the spiritual aspect of our lives, and we go and pray. You ain't that special. I missed your luncheon because I was praying. I
Right.
think a lot of it is just because a lot of misunderstandings are rooted in people being so self-absorbed, i.e., and let me just make it plain, people of power. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes. Yes.
Make it
Yes.
you so self-absorbed, you think everything revolves around you.
You. Mhm.
If I don't understand something or not even don't if I can't relate to it, it's not that I don't understand, I'm not stupid. I just can't relate to it. I can't like we can tell stories of, grew up in school. Like I said, we wait on the bus ticket. When we open this podcast and I say, when you ask me how did we meet, and I said we were in the office waiting on bus tickets, I can guarantee you probably at least half of your listeners are not gonna know what I was talking about
No, yeah. Yeah.
because it wasn't your reality. It
Yes.
doesn't mean that you don't, you can't get it. It just wasn't the way you live because most
Right.
people had school transportation, through high school. Whereas
Yes.
when we in
Yes.
the public school system, you did not have school transportation through high school. So for your
Yeah.
listeners, bus ticket allows you to ride the city bus at
Mhm.
a reduced rate without having to come out of pocket and pay for it. That one small thing can be something where it's just because you just don't understand it because it's not your reality. And
Right.
you'll never understand people having a different reality if we all step into the quiet resignation. Now, do I
That
think that it has to be a situation where we're going to um, purposely have a class or a session or whatever the case may be. No, not necessarily so, but we can do it in different ways. For example,
Mhm.
as a principal, I'm going to work with our team to schedule different lunches, celebrations throughout the year. We always have a celebration before we go out for Thanksgiving break, before we go out for Christmas
Mhm.
break, before we go out
Mhm.
for spring break, right? So for me, as we plan the celebration or the luncheon or the whatever we're going to do, I'll do that taking into consideration right before Thanksgiving. That's right in the middle of I think Rosh Hashanah, I believe. But there's a
Yeah.
but just making sure that I'm aware of what's happening during that time. So as we plan it, we can plan that event, that activity, that, whatever it may be with those different cultures in mind of our team. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
that's how, for me, that's my way of continuing the awareness of the different cultures and backgrounds that we have on our team, celebrating
Right.
them as a part of our
Right.
team, but also becoming
Right.
aware. We can continue with the acknowledgement of making sure that we want to have equity for our team. We just do it in a different way.
Okay. A lot of that insight comes from what you were born as. So you have that insight, but again, people that have privilege, they don't have that insight, but it's not up to me to teach them that.
Mhm.
It's up to them to want to know that.
Was
And that's the whole point of this podcast is understanding and ensuring that people understand that you can be kind. It's okay to be kind. Even now when kindness seems to be out of style now, seems like everybody just wants to be rude and nasty and that seems to be getting the attention, like you said, from the media. But here, that's not my goal. My goal is people who have the courage and the audacity to be kind in spite of what this is doing. And most of the time, those are people who have always been that way.
Yeah. And that is one thing I think that's important from an educational perspective. Like I say, we come into spaces thinking the kid is the one that has all the problems. The
Right.
adult, so as a school leader, and as a district leader, I also have to be mindful that the adults who are charged with teaching children or the adults who are
Hmm.
charged with leading schools are people too. And
Yes.
they are people with issues. And they are people with challenges
Okay.
that maybe we need to help them address.
Okay.
'Cause we do forget sometimes that adults are coming in when they get out their car and they walk into that building with their lesson plans and their books. Some
Hmm.
of them got a call on the way into work that wasn't good news, either about their health
Right.
or they got a call about a child or a parent, because many of ours
Hmm.
us have taken care of parents. We're having aging parents
Right.
with us. And so that's also, I think, in terms of being kind and curious is important for us as leaders, especially those of us who are in the educational realm. We will focus on kids first, and we should. Don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
we should. Kids should
Hmm.
always come
Hmm.
first, but we can't lose sight of tapping into what is happening with the adult who's teaching the kid. We have to intentionally create the space in the relationship to where that adult can say, "You know what, Dr. Wilson, I need to talk to you for a minute. No, my lesson this week wasn't that good. You came in, you observed me, wasn't that good. I found out last week that fill in the blank. Or I found out
Hmm.
yesterday, fill in the
Right.
blank. Or I'm
Right.
going to, whatever it is. So what that does is one, first and foremost, if they can get it out, then they can deal with it. And then
Right.
secondly, you gently just ask them, what support do you need? Do we need to get the counselor involved? Or do we need to get you some support on benefits that can maybe help you with taking care of that or whatever the case may be?
Hmm.
And that will help them free their mind to know, yes, they're dealing with adult issues that don't have anything to do with the child now. Because at the end of the day,
Right.
you still cannot choose. You can't not teach.
Right. Right.
But I can be, kind enough to say, what do you need to help make you better? So when you walk in the door, you can turn that part of your life off. You can do what you need to do, and then you can also address it.
Again, knowing you for as long as I have and you being in education most of your life, I never even thought about that part of it. I always knew you were an advocate for those children, but not even understanding that you also had to be an advocate for the people that are teaching those children. Yeah.
I also remember when we were in high school, we had a teacher. She was a new teacher who was a young woman, and she was in an abusive relationship, and her partner came to the school and jumped on her in the parking lot. So remembering those things helped me,
Okay.
now see, like, again, these are people.
Okay. Right,
People.
right,
These are people,
right.
and yes, they are adults, yes, they are professionals, yes, they are educators, but they are also people with real issues. We have to lean into that to help support.
Yeah. That's a good note to end on is that we're all people and we
Yeah.
all have, as someone said to me, and I told him I'm gonna use this. You don't know what chapter somebody's life is in.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
treat them kindly
That's
because you just don't know. They could be in the final chapter, they could be in a chapter that has a lot of drama. Now that I know that you experienced that in high school, that makes sense as to why, as an educator, your primary focus is to children,
mhm,
but they can't learn if the person who's teaching them is in some type of situation or in some type of mindset. So
yeah.
that's awesome. I appreciate you, Dr. Jeanine Wilson. I appreciate you taking the time out. I know we've been girlfriends since dinosaurs roamed the earth, but I still appreciate you taking the time out to be with me today and to share your wisdom on having the audacity to be kind as an educator
Yeah,
because you all, I'm telling you, I don't know how you do it, but I appreciate what you do because now the way things are, I can't even imagine how hard it's getting for you.
yeah,
But I will say hang in there. You are appreciated. Even those parents that may not seem like they appreciate you, trust me, they do because they're trusting you with their children. So, for my audience, this is Kind Curiosity, where we have the audacity to be kind and the courage to be curious. I'm Felicia Hamilton, your host, and I will see you next time.